our next workshop. As a reminder, we are going to be recording this workshop, so just be aware of that. We will be posting it at a later date for everyone to be able to view that as they are able to. I know we've had some people who can't join us tonight and are excited that that's going to be available to them, so thank you for being with us. Again, y'all are all muted and your chat is going directly to the host. So if you need anything, please go ahead and send a message to the host so that we can see your messages. Any questions you have, post them in the chat and we will be sure to ask our presenter those questions at the end of the meeting. And then the last thing is I will be dropping a link throughout the evening as more people join us to sign in for the actual workshop. You only have to sign in once. So once you've done it, don't worry about completing it again for this evening. And that's really the basis of where we're getting started tonight. I'm excited for our next presenter. We have Don Mrziowski, who's from Bell County. He's a volunteer for us in Bell County and is a member of the Rabbit Advisory Board for Texas. He is also an ARBA judge. He's waving to you on the screen right now. He is also an ARBA judge, and so he's going to be sharing information on how to select and breed show quality animals. And so, Don, I'm going to hand it over to you. I'm going to mute myself and turn off my camera, and it's all on you.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and so y'all don't have to worry about because my video may be bouncing around here. Okay. What we're going to talk about today is selecting and breeding show quality animals. As Megan said, my name is Don Mrziowski. I am a ARBA licensed judge. I've been judging for almost 25 years. A lot of crossed a lot of country. Judged at a lot of state fairs across the country. I've judged numerous places. I've also shown a lot. I've been showing rabbits since I was 9, and whatnot. So and continue to do so. So we're going to talk about what I know, and I'm going to pass along information, and then we're at the end here. We're going to give y'all some time to ask questions, and I'll see if I can answer them for you. All right, let's see if I can get my screen to. There we go. Where it all begins. It always begins at the beginning. All right. This is one of those things that we always, everybody wants to jump in and says, okay, how do you get a good rabbit? Well, it all starts at the beginning. What's the purpose? What are we going to do with the project? And really, I break it down into several options. What are you going to do if you're going to be raising show quality animals or preparing show quality animals, what's the purpose of doing so? Are you doing it for straight meat production? Are you doing it for making pets? There's got to be an alternative source. If you're just doing it to make show animals, you're going to be sorely disappointed because not every animal we raise is going to be of a show quality. So you have to start with that because we're going to talk a little bit about the process of how we get down to those 1 or 2 animals that we really want to hang on to, and then what we do with the rest of them. Okay, because if you're going to raise rabbits, you're going to have litters. You're going to have rabbits you don't need to show. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and whatnot. So and we always want to keep in mind where I live matters. Okay, and this is for a lot of folks. Rabbits are a huge project for those who live in the city. That gives them an opportunity to participate on the livestock side of 4-H. But you got to be aware of several things. You got to worry about your ordinances. You got to keep track of when these ordinances change. We had a friend of ours that lived in the city of Temple. All of a sudden, they changed the ordinance. They can only have 2 rabbits. Well, that doesn't do you a whole lot of good when you got a buck and a couple of does and they're having litters. So be aware of that. If you live in an area that has a homeowners association, make sure that you're following your HOA guidelines. Your HOA may say, may allow it, may not. They may give you a variance so that you can raise your rabbits. All right. So be sure you check that as well, because when you're raising rabbits for show, you're going to be increasing your population. You're going to start out with a few, then you're going to be increasing that. All right, space is another thing of consideration. You need to make sure you got the proper space, not only in the cage size, but also in the space you need in your facility. You don't want to have them all bunched up on top of each other because that could cause its own problems, okay, and be a detriment to having a good quality show animal. So that's one of the things that we're also going to be talking about. All right, biosecurity considerations with the RH. For those of you who participated in that last conference by Dr. Henley, it was a really good conference, and I encourage all of you to be able to go online and watch that recording. He did an excellent job on presenting that, and that's one of the things you got to think about now with biosecurity. Used to, you could raise rabbits, and if you had 1 or 2 bunnies, you could let them play on the grass. You really can't do that anymore because you don't know if an animal or a rabbit with RHDV has been on that grass. So we have to be able to watch that and be practicing biosecurity. All right. So that's a couple of things that where you live really does matter. So keep that in mind whenever you're looking, and it'll play into how we prepare for show, how we prepare our animals, and whatnot. So another thing you're going to want to do is, and these are all preparatory things. This is all what we're doing before we get ready. County fair rules. All right. I know there's a lot of kids out there that haven't selected their breed and they haven't picked up their animals. Okay. County fairs. All county fairs are different. We're fortunate here to have one that allows any breed that's recognized in the ARBA. That being said, there are some that specify either just Californians in New Zealand's, just meat breeds. So be aware of that, of what county fair rules do. Also, your time of ownership for those spring shows and whatnot. Now is probably the time to be looking for that. So if you need to have a rabbit by a certain time, be aware of your timelines because you don't want to get that rabbit too late and it's beyond the deadline for ownership. So make sure you check all those things out in advance. For those who do meat pens, if you're going to raise your meat pens, make sure you get your animals in advance long enough for them to settle so that you can breed them to have meat pens, to have those bunnies to be able to raise them well. If you're buying meat pens, contact the person, your meat pen breeder, to make sure you get on their list, because just because they have rabbits may not make, they may be filling orders for another county. They, these does that some of these people use, they're booked months in advance. So make sure you check with those guys on a regular basis. There's lots of sites where you can go to find, where do I get a meat pen from? You can go to texascows.org, I believe it is. That's the Texas Californian page. They have a meat pen list that people pay a membership to the Texas Californian Club, and those who provide meat pens get on the list. So there are also other places that you can check for folks that sell meat pens. For the fancy rabbits, it's a little bit different. You're going to be checking. I'm going to show you some places to go look on where to go look for fancy rabbits. Okay, and then really for all breeds, because we're not looking at meat production here. We're looking at show animals. So we're going to make sure that we get the best show animal we can. I'll tell parents all the time, 4-H careers are short. It doesn't matter if you start them out at 9 years old. Okay, you've only got 9 years at the most to get for these kids to have a project to work it all the way through. 9 years, it will fly by for you parents. All right. So, and it's a lot of fun. Everybody enjoys it. There's a lot of camaraderie. You're getting into a good project there. Space, we talked a little bit about space earlier. There are different kinds of space. If you're doing where you need space for show animals, Show animals don't need as much space as breeding animals. A doe in a litter requires more space. Typically, cows in New Zealand are either 30 by 30 or 30 by 36. Uh, Four-class rabbits, what I say are four-class, the fancy rabbits, probably use either a 30 by 30 or a 24. It uses smaller coops, because what you're wanting to do is you want to minimize the space that those babies run loose, run around in. All right, you want the babies to stay in their nest box as much as possible, but when they do get out, you want to be able to catch them. You don't want to chase them around the coops. What we have here is a picture of an outdoor coop, and there's nothing wrong with having your rabbits outdoors. But when you have your show animals outdoors, be aware of your environment. Make sure that you're not setting the cage up right to the next to the fence where the dog's across the fence barking at it all the time. There's nothing worse than a show animal that if you want to put a rabbit on edge, have a dog barking at it 24/7 because it can smell it. Okay, so be aware of your environment. Whenever you're setting these cage up, like this one, for example, that cage would have to be clean on a regular basis. So make sure that's where you have to plan your week as far as your cleanliness. Talk with your 4-H leader. There's stuff that you can get to spray in those coops to wash them out. It's a good opportunity to get the bunny out. Be working with it while you clean it out. If you have a sibling, y'all can swap out. Everybody gets a turn at cleaning coops. Everybody gets a turn at working rabbits. So it's always good. All right. Talked a little bit about the breeding program. One thing about the breeding program, if you're going to do a breeding program, which is part of what we're doing here, you're going to want to have a place that you can have a quiet place. Once again, you don't want to have a lot of noise. For example, in our barn, typically we have a radio playing, and that way they've always got this background noise, so any sudden noises don't startle them. Because does, if they get nervous making your show bunnies, they could stomp a litter just by being nervous and warning somebody, hey, don't come near me. And that's the way rabbits react, whether it be does with litters and does without litters, bucks as well. When a rabbit gets nervous and they don't want you anywhere near them, they're going to stomp their feet. And if they're inside a nest box with babies, they're going to stomp them babies, and they're not going to mean to do it. So you want to make sure you have a quiet place, but enough, you don't want to have a lot of activity around them when they are having those litters for you. All right. So make sure you keep that in mind. All right. Next, okay. What we're going to talk about now is breeds. All right. We've already gone through what do we need to do in advance of what we we know what we need to do. Get coops. We need to get materials, water, feeders, all that stuff. That's in Rabbits 101. You probably have gone through several of those courses. I'm not going to go over them here. So somebody is writing on my screen. So, all right. Right now, the ARBA currently recognizes 49 recognized breeds of rabbits. Okay. Within those breeds, several of them have varieties. So therefore, there's a wide range of animals you can do. This is where I'm going to share. I'm going to go to my other screen. I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and I'm going to move to another screen here and share my other app out. See if I can do this without much interruption. Share screen, and I am going to share out. Okay. Okay. What I've done here is this is the arba.net site, and this is going to be a huge resource for you. A lot of times what we'll see whenever somebody says, well, I don't know what breed I want to raise. Well, this is where I always send parents and children. the key is that if you're not limited by your breeds, this is the best place to take a look at what do those breeds look like. All right. There's a large number of breeds, 49 breeds, like I said, different varieties, different shapes. They got Belgian hares that are a little bit different. Britannia Petites. We got the Blanc de Haute. There's some, ARBA does recognize cavies. And if your county fair does do cavies, that would be a totally separate project. But you'll notice that each of these has visit the club website or find a breeder. Okay. Lots of information here on each of these. They tell you what the maximum weight is. So you get an idea how big the rabbit animals are going to get. Okay. A Beveridge's going to get, maximum weight 12 pounds. You got a 2.5 pound Britannia Petite. So you understand that that's a little bitty animal. Okay. These are their maximum weights. You can visit their club websites where they'll give you additional information. That you can look on there to find breeders. That way you can see, okay, who's winning the shows, the national shows, who's winning the local shows. And it helps you with trying to figure out where you're going to start doing your shopping from. Who are you going to try to mimic in the way you select your animals? Okay. It's going to be a big key whenever we start getting into this. It also gives you a good idea of some pretty darn nice pictures of what those animals should look like. There's a few in here that are, I wish were better, but for the most part, there's some pretty good pictures in here. All right. So, and a lot of these breeds we do have in Texas. So there's the Flemish, max, they can go over 20 pounds. I've weighed them out as much as 24. So very large rabbit. So, all right. So this is a good site to go to, arba.net. And within that, you can find recognized breeds. And you'll find that here when you go to About the ARBA. And this is a really good source, like I said, for finding out what breed do I want to raise. And I tell all the parents, have the child do a breed that they want to raise. Okay? Because if the child wants to raise it, they're going to be more involved with it, and they're going to they're going to work harder at it, and they're going to do a better job. So make sure that just because you raised a certain breed when you were in 4-H or an FFA, that may not necessarily be the breed that they want to raise. Okay, if you are one of those that are in a county where you got Californians or New Zealand's only, then you're going to have to go that route. But make sure you get one that's, there's a lot of good cows and New Zealand's out there. And I definitely would recommend going, looking at that cow page, but look at the pictures, study each of the breeds before you go shop. All right, let's see if I can switch here. Switch back to my PowerPoint. Okay. And like I said, they have a size range. I've that 23. That's probably pretty close, but I have seen a Flemish that weighed 24. So it was a heavy rabbit. Now, just because they're big does not mean they're mean. All right. All rabbits have a couple of things that come with them. They all have teeth and they all have toenails. But there are ways that we can set our kids up to be successful and make sure those animals don't hurt the kids. All right. One of them is that we're always gentle with our rabbits. When you go and you're working with a breeder, if you've never handled a rabbit before, make sure that whenever you go looking for rabbits, that you work with your breeder on how to handle it. All right. There's a proper way to handle these rabbits. If the rabbit doesn't feel like it's going to be hurt, if he doesn't feel like it's going to be dropped, he's not going to take off and run and scratch you. Okay. The other thing too is that there are tools such as toenail clippers to clip these toenails. And for a lot of these kids, I always tell parents, when you're working with rabbits, make sure that the kids either have some kind of sleeves to protect their arms, or they have a judging jacket, they make judging jackets, they make medical jackets that will work, that have a little thicker material, Wrangler shirts, Western shirts that have a thicker material. Have the kids wearing something like that will protect the kids from being accidentally scratched, but also allow, because if the kids get scratched, they're not going to want to, mess with the rabbit because it hurt them. So we want to make sure that we put the kids in the best position possible. All right. Okay. Now that we've kind of selected, we've got we know what we want. We have our area set up. We know what breed we want. Now that we've selected the breed we want, now it's time to start our search. All right. So what we'll do is we'll get, take a look at the, on the ARBA website, there is a calendar for local shows. You can actually go there and find the Texas shows and where those shows are located. And with that, I always recommend, if you don't know what rabbit you want, or you're not sure, or you kind of have an idea, I always tell parents to take their kids to a local show just to look, to watch what's going to happen. The nice thing about rabbit breeders, which is kind of having done cattle and hogs and sheep and all the other species that you can do at the fair, I find personally that the one thing that rabbit people will do is talk your ear off as far as telling you about their rabbits. They all want to tell you about their rabbits. And that's the best thing about when you go to a local show. All right. You can see what's available locally. You can see the animal live. You can watch part of the show as they're judging to get an idea of what you're looking for. A lot of breeders some breeders will let you handle, say, okay, I'm new, I'm looking to buy. What am I looking for? And they could show you what kind of things you're going to be watching for in a particular breed. Okay. That's usually the best way to get an idea of what am I looking for. They can also help you with things like, okay, what am I looking at cost-wise if I want to buy a good animal? Because you're going to want to buy, like I said, 9 years is a short time period. And it's best to start off on a good foot, because it's hard to get there if you're starting with what would be somebody's thirds and fourths. Okay, you want to get some of the better rabbits for your kids. Okay, so, but you can speak to exhibitors as well about specific issues. You could talk to them about, okay, what is, some breeds are a little bit more hyper than other breeds, so the kids need to be aware of that. All right, they may not be a rabbit that's suitable for a newcomer unless they're really aware of what they're getting into. So you want to be aware of that. Some breeds are, you can, once you work with them, they'll be fine. Some you got to be careful with. Okay, so talk with exhibitors, find out what you can about them. A lot of folks will say, I don't recommend my bloodlines for a first timer, because the rabbits are a little high strung. For one reason or another, they can be bred that way. So you're going to want to watch for that. So that's why you always want, local shows are always great for that. So you can go look, make sure you can see what animals are there, what animals are available in your area. And that way you can get some idea of what you're getting into. Also, if you're lacking in equipment, a lot of these local shows also have equipment that they sell there. You can pick up carriers, you can pick up coops, you can pick up judging tables, judging stands. You can pick up all kinds of grooming items, just a wide variety of stuff that takes place at these local shows. Clubs are a lot of fun, and that's the one thing about with the 4-H. They're supported by local leaders. Okay, they are they're fun. We want to be participating with our peers. We want to be competing with our peers. We want to show good showmanship when we are showing. Um, and it's always a good time. And in some cases, it can land you a scholarship at the end of your trail. So so it's always a good to start there. And of course, with additional resources, I've put the I'm going to put I put our email in there for the Texas 4-H Advisory Board. That is always available if you have a question, you're looking for a particular breed. If you can't seem to find one, we can help you with that. Okay. If we know of a breeder that's local, then we could do that. I know that all of our advisory board members would not recommend somebody unless they were reputable. Okay. So that's the one thing you want to be aware of is, you go to somebody's place, you want to make sure that they're showing you good animals. All right. There's no need to be showing you something that they're not going to want to keep. Okay. As I said, there's a wealth of information and resources from all kinds of clubs. All right. Whether it be your local 4-H club, a local rabbit club, your state organizations, and of course, national specialty clubs. And there is a search for that. If you go to the ARBA website, there is a club search. And that way it's an additional resource for you. And I'm going to show you how to get there. And if you go to affiliated clubs and do a club search, all right, as soon as I get there, and I want to do a search, I believe. It's going to let me do it here. Yep. All right. And I'm just going to do a quick search for Texas clubs. And you get all the clubs in Texas, so you can actually look at some that are in your area. And some of them are specialty clubs. Some of them are all breed clubs. You can tell here by the site if it's a local club, a regional specialty club, a state specialty club, so there's all kinds of resources here to find out, okay, where can I get some good rabbits from? Okay. And we can, and folks, these folks on these sites can put you in touch with some of the best people. Okay. And that's what we want to do is we want to get our kids the best available. Okay. We're going to switch back to here. Okay. Now arba.net, that is the source. Okay. All these rabbit shows, whether it be a local ARBA show or a county show, are all governed. They all use the ARBA as their source as far as how we're going to judge the shows. If we have just a couple other things, the standard of perfection right here on the right, that is the standard by which all rabbits are judged. All breeds are not judged the same way. So if you're going to have a breed have a breed, you need to understand what your breed, where all the points are. If you're looking at a meat breed, a Californian or New Zealand, it's all on muscling and body structure. If you're looking for say a Britannia Petite, it's all about how slender, how how fine bone, the limbs. You want to have the shape of the head, the shape of the ears. There's a couple of breeds. There's one breed called the Harlequin. The Harlequin actually is about alteration of color. Half the rabbit is one color, half the rabbit is another color, and it alternates. If you have a black ear on the right, you have a black half of the face on the left. So it varies with the animal. So every breed has its own standard. So if you're really getting into wanting to know what do I need to look for in that breed, that's the book you want to get. Now you'll notice that the book is ending. It comes out brand new every 4 to 5 years. Okay, from 2016 to 2020. There's going to be a new one coming out in 2021 in January. It should be out coming up soon, but it'll be active in January. So if you're going to purchase one, you may want to hold off on that. unless you can get hold of one of these. So unless you have one, know somebody that's got one, an extra that you can use. All right. And I know that a lot of folks have these, and I'm sure would be more than willing to share parts of it with you. All right. The other things on this, and this is one of the things that when I talk about you're joining 4-H, you want to join the ARBA as well, because you're going to get this guide here, better raising better rabbits and cavies. It has a wealth of information, not only about getting them ready for show, but a lot about diseases and disease control. All right, more beyond a lot of it beyond RHVD. RHVD may not even be in there yet, but in the new one, it very well may be. Domestic Rabbits, that's a bi-monthly magazine that comes out. It's a really good source. A couple of years ago, they had a gentleman Caleb Thomas, that actually wrote up a really nice article on how to select your meat pens. And that's what he went through it step by step of how to pick out your meat pens. So it's a really good source of information. I always recommend that folks use that. And ARBA is a big supporter of 4-H. So, all right, more on the clubs. Okay, there's different kinds of clubs. There are specialty clubs. Specialty clubs are breed specific. For example, if I join the, say the Mini Rex Club, one of the things that I'm gonna get for my first year of membership is a guidebook. Within that guidebook, it's going to have all kinds of articles about how to get my specific breed prepared for show, how to feed that Mini Rex out, what the weights should be as it grows. If you're getting a youngster, how big should it be at that age? So much information out there that is breed specific that it's not a bad idea to join that. If you have already selected your breed of what you're looking for, go ahead and join that specialty club. Get the most information you can, because the more information you have, the better you will be equipped whenever it's time to select, not only select rabbits that you're going to purchase, but also being able to select your own breed rabbits that you've bred when it's time to do that. All right. So make sure that that you do that. That's a really good source for you. Okay. And because a lot of these specialty clubs, they not only provide guidebooks, but they also provide a breed specific newsletters that have all kinds of articles in them. I'm a member of the National New Zealand Club, and there was an article in there by Fibber McGee that was really valuable to me. It was one that, because Fibber was one of those gentlemen that had won 5 national conventions. Rarely, I think there's maybe 1 or 2 people that have done that in the history of the ARBA. Not an easy thing to do, but he put a really good article. They had a really good article about how he prepared his animals for show. So lots of information like that. Okay, now that we've done all that, now we're going to start shopping. This is one of my areas that I really tell parents, watch it. If don't ever tell somebody you're looking for a rabbit to show at the county fair. Because to some of these folks, that's like, okay, I don't need to sell you the best rabbit I got. I can sell you a substandard rabbit because it's only going to be shown at a county fair. That's not what you want to do. All right. And I'll tell you what words you do need to use on the next slide. But one of the other words that we're not going to use is 4-H quality. We don't want to tell somebody, because in the same premise, if they think they could say that 4-H is, if you're showing it just into 4-H shows, that it's somehow substandard, and that's not the case. If you saw our show that we were able to have last year at the extravaganza, the rabbits that did the best were top quality animals. They compete on a regular basis, not only in 4-H, but in regular local shows. So, and to be competitive like that, yeah, you're not going to want to say just a 4-H quality rabbit or a brood animal. This rabbit would make a good brood doe. No, that's another clue as to that's not one that they're wanting to keep. All right. So what you're going to want to do is, those are three comments that if that ever comes up, it's like, whoa, wait a minute. This is not what I'm looking for. All right. What you're going to want to do is use this word. I want an ARBA quality show animal. Doesn't matter if you're showing it only at the county fair. All right. Because if you're going after an ARBA quality show animal, yes, you're going to pay a little bit more for it, but you're going to, that breeder that you're buying that animal from is going to understand, I want that animal free of disqualifications. Because that last thing that breeder wants to do is have you buy that animal from them, and then that animal get disqualified at an ARBA show. Okay, that's adult breeders are very proud of what they sell to not only to kids but to other adults. So that's one of those things you're going to definitely want to say, I want an ARBA quality show animal, and then that way you know that you're going to get something of quality from them. All right. Okay, make sure when you're shopping, do your homework. Learn as much as you can about the breed you want to raise. Okay, that's involving, going online, finding out all the information. If you've got folks around you that raise that breed, talk with them. Use every possible resource you can get your hands on to find out, okay, when I go shopping, I want to be a smart shopper. All right, I want to go get the best animal I can get. All right. Because pricing, it's going to vary. Pricing varies with the breed, the quality of the animal, and sometimes even with the breeder. Okay, there are lots of different variations on price. So you're going to have to figure out, okay, what's my budget, and then that way you can go ahead and figure that out from there. Of all things, be a smart shopper. All right, that's why I can't stress that enough. I see too many kids that go, too many kids and parents that go to someplace, buy a rabbit, and then get to the show, and it's not the breed they were told it was, because when as a judge, we look at all the breeds, we understand how to classify it, but some breeder told them that it was a breed that it isn't, and there's nothing more embarrassing for the kid that be showing, say, a Polish, and really it's a Netherland dwarf, or vice versa. Or some other breed, and then they start crossing them in, and a Californian white, and really it's a cross between a New Zealand and a Californian. Whenever you're out there looking for rabbits, breeding rabbits, if you're not doing meat production for strictly commercial purposes, which is not what we're talking about here, but if you're not, make sure it is a purebred animal. All right, that's what you want. You want an animal you can show. So be a smart shopper. Visit several breeders if possible. Kind of schedule that out. If you go to a local show, it's real easy. You can hit several breeders up. You can watch how their animals are competing on the table. Okay? That's why it's always good to go to a local show. You can find out all kinds of information. And of course, one of the things that you're going to want to do when you go to somebody's place to look at their animals, be willing to walk away if something doesn't sound right to you. If they say, well, this rabbit will catch up. It's a little small right now, but if you feed it more, it'll catch up. And if it just doesn't sound right, don't buy it. All right. If you're just buying somebody else's problems that they're trying to get rid of. Okay. So that's why I always say, be a smart shopper. All right. You're buying show animals. And if you're buying show animals, you want to make sure you've got the best you can afford. All right. One of the other things I always do is make sure you have, if you are uncomfortable handling these animals, make sure that you're sitting there with the breeder, say, can you please check it for DQs for me? I'd like to see this. They can show you that if you're buying a buck, that it's a buck or doe. If it's, the color of the toenails, that all the toenails are the same color, that all the there's not a broken toe. You want to make sure that is an intact animal whenever you leave their barn. You want to make sure that the teeth are correct. Okay, so whenever you're looking at the proper bite of a teeth, make sure that top pair of teeth are in front of that lower pair of teeth. If they're budding or if they're they curl under, you definitely don't want that animal. So make sure you take. That's all part of being a smart shopper. So if you're uncomfortable, like I said, make sure that they show you that it's free of disqualifications. And that one part of that is understanding your breed or variety as to what the disqualifications are. You know, if it's a, say, a black mini Rex, and they turn the rabbit over and there's a white spot on its belly button, you know, have them blow on that spot. And if it flags white, that's a disqualification. So that's a rabbit you definitely don't want to take home. All right, especially if you want to show it. So as always, be a smart shopper. Now you're armed with all this knowledge. Know your budget as well. Know how much you're going to want to spend. Show rabbits, whether you're using it for breeding or you're going to actually show them. They range in price anywhere. I've seen them as from 50 to 200. It's going to vary depending upon, like I said, upon the breed, depends on the quality of the animal as well as the breeder. So, you know, be prepared about what is my budget going to be. You can actually ask these folks before you go look at their animals, what am I looking to spend to buy a rabbit from you? You can ask them that. They'll tell you. They'll be upfront with you about it. So, all right. And always get the best animals that you can for your budget. You know, because like I said, 9 years is not long. If you start out with some decent rabbits, some good rabbits, that you're more likely to have, the kids will have more fun because they will be more competitive if they start out that way. If you start out with lower rung rabbits, rabbits that probably shouldn't even be showing, then it's going to take, you can never get there in 9 years. All right. So, and it's so disappointing for kids if they, you know, you take the rabbits to the show and they're not they're not even being competitive. So we always want you to be competitive like that. Always start out with $2 and two does and a buck. I'm sorry, 2 does and a buck. That way you're breeding and that way you're producing your animals, and that way you can start your breeding, interbreeding with the families that they produce. And if you're buying rabbits, show rabbits, or breeding them, make sure that if you're doing colored varieties of any breed, make sure your colors are compatible, because some of them aren't. Okay, so be sure that your colors are compatible, and that's one of the keys of joining that specialty club, is that there's a lot of information in that if there's varieties about how you can work that. Okay, whenever you're going out and looking for these rabbits, or even if you're preparing your own rabbits, make sure that you ask for a pedigree in advance. Make sure that you're going to be, when you're buying these rabbits, some breeders don't give pedigree, some do. If you ask them for a pedigree, just remember that pedigree is only as good as the person that put that inked the pen or made it up. So it's always good to check with, get your animals from reputable people. All right. There's also a registration process. If they've been showing that rabbit for over 6 months, it may be registered. If it is, it'll have a little bit of different pedigree, but at the same time, if it's registered, they also have the papers on it. All right. Now the papers don't do you much good for county fairs, or doesn't even really do you much good for all breed shows. But here's where you start looking at the lineage and the bloodlines of your particular rabbits. And it always helps you when we get into the later on of selling animals, after we've had our litters and we want to start, okay, we narrow down what we're going to keep, what we're not, and that's what helps. Okay. Extras. Be sure you ask what feed the seller uses, okay? And then check around your area to see if there's that brand of feed available, okay? If not, you're going to want to, take a gallon baggie or two and along with you to see if you can get some feed from them. That way you can transition them from their feed to your feed. Most breeders will do that without any hesitation. Most of them have their gallon baggies available, but if not, that way you've got one. So just have it just in case. That way, if they say, well, I can't find any, no problem. I've got one out in the truck. Can I get it for you? And then they can fill it up. All right. Okay. Now I've got my rabbits at home. Now what? Well, if you're preparing your animals for show, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get those animals out on a regular basis, and you're going to want to be grooming those coats. It's kind of hard to show you on a PowerPoint how to groom them, but I highly recommend, like I said earlier, the kids need to be wearing either an apron or some kind of protective clothing when they are handling these animals. Best grooming material is water. Water in your hands. I know that there's some folks out there that use brushes and combs, but it needs to be a soft, and you don't need to be, it needs to be gentle on those animals. Okay. Two things that this does, by grooming those animals on a regular basis, it promotes hair growth, cleans out the dead hair, gets the new hair in there, and two, it gentles the animals down. And it's always great, whenever you're judging, that you get an animal that's not going crazy on you because it's been handled on a regular basis. And also, if you're doing showmanship later on, that's a bonus, because those rabbits that are gentle always help the kids move up those placings in showmanship. So make sure that you get those rabbits out on a regular basis. All right. Now, if you're going to do the breeding side of it, what you're going to want to do is after the rabbits settle in, typically about 2 weeks or so. I've seen more, I've seen less. It depends on the animal. Then you want to bring the does to the buck's cage. After the buck services the doe, mark that on your calendar. 28 days later, you're putting a nest box in. All right. You're going to want to make sure that doe has peace and quiet while she's doing her business. All right. You can either use hay for bedding material, or you can use shavings for bedding material. If you're going to use shavings, try to get dust-free shavings. All right. Now you got babies. Make sure you inspect the litter. There is an impact on litter size. If you have a large litter, they're not going to grow as fast as, say, a litter of 10 isn't going to grow off as fast as a litter of 5. So if you've got a couple of does, you could foster babies off. It's really easy to do on the day they're born. If you've got multiple does having them on the same day, most times you can just take one baby and put it in another one's nest box, and they'll never know the difference. All right. One of the things you're going to want to do is make sure you feed extra ration to those does. In a lot of cases, double it up. If you're in a humid part of the state, you got to be really careful by filling those feeders up, because if that feed gets damp, it will swell. All right. So be aware of that. Be aware of your environment with that. If you want to do creep feed, there are creep feeds out there, but make sure you use a special feeder. You don't want that. If you put a creep feed out there, that doe is going to eat it all up, and the babies aren't going to get any, because the babies only nibble when they first come out of the box. All right. So be sure you're aware of that. Okay, weaning time. All right, now we're to weaning time, 8 to 10 weeks old. This is when we do our first call. When I say call, what we're doing is we're selecting good from the bad. We're looking for that diamond in the rough. We want that. We're looking for those rabbits. We work, if you don't know how to cull your own rabbits, if you know somebody who can help you, have them work with you. All right, make sure that that they can come over, go over your rabbits with you, tell you what's good, what's bad about them. It's always good to try to associate yourself with a mentor of your particular breed. All right, that way they can help you make your selections, kind of guide you along the way. So I know I've done that with several kids and helped them. And with our local club here, we always have folks bringing rabbits. We used to have people bringing their young bunnies over here, so we'd go over them with them. We can't do that now because of RHDV, but you can do that. You can have somebody come over and then do them outside your rabbitry so they don't go in it, and go over your rabbits and just help you out with what you need to call. All right. Some of the things you're going to want to watch for when you're doing this process: watch for the breed characteristics. This is what I was talking about with the if you look at the standard of perfection, the breed specific standard, also with the guidebooks that you get, they'll tell you what you need to look for when you're going through and picking out your show bunnies from your litters. I have yet to see one that doesn't do that. It's all very straightforward. So, and make sure you're looking at some breeds, you'll give a structure of the animal. Make sure that animal isn't too long in the shoulder, that it's not too flat. Those are animals that you're going to want to put in your cull pens. Okay, you're not going to want to prepare them for show because you're wasting your time. You want to have good, you always, as breeders of show animals, we always want to put our best rabbits on the table. Okay. Breed disqualifications, same thing. Make sure you know what the breed disqualifications for your animals are. Okay, make sure you check that out. And of course, general disqualifications, teeth, white spots, toenails, broken toes, abscesses, all that stuff. And above all, you're going to want to cull, okay? Showing, you always want to show good quality rabbits that you can be proud of. I've always, even when my boys were showing eons ago, I used to say, you always want to put, I always talk to them about, we always want to put a rabbit on the table that's going to be competitive. Whether you win first or not, you want to be competitive. You want that judge to think, is this rabbit better than that rabbit? Or instead of, okay, this is an easy placing down the line. Make them think hard about how to place your rabbit. By doing so, it'll move up, and that's how you get that reputation of being an excellent breeder. All right. Now, what are we going to, and you want to call periodically. Typically what I do on mine is I'll call them at 8 to 10 weeks. That's when I do my first cuts. I'm looking for DQs and body structure, right? And breed specific DQs. After that, I'm going to look at them again. And after that, I'm going to look at them for 3 months. And then every month, I'm going to be looking at them. And as they grow, I'm going to be weighing them. I'm going to be checking them. If make sure that they didn't develop something that I wasn't aware of that is a DQ. Some of them they have abscesses or hernias that may not show up until they get a little bit older, because they don't their intestines don't pop out all the time. But then you'll feel that bubble, and then you're going, then you got to cull it. All right. Now, what are you going to do with all those culls? This is something you should have planned in advance. What are we going to do with all these rabbits? You're going to need multiple outlets. There are places where you can sell them for meat production if they're meat quality animals. There are also places that pet stores or whatnot, or pet outlets. But you're going to want to make sure you make those contacts before it's like, okay, I got to move some rabbits. All right. So, and then of course the show quality ones are the ones that you could sell to other folks. All right. And you want to sell some good ones. You don't want to sell bad rabbits to other folks, because you're not helping yourself, because you get that reputation for just selling culls. You want to sell good quality animals to other folks. So that way you get that reputation of being a top-notch breeder. And that, my dear friends, is the end of the presentation. So I forgot to put a question screen up there, and I do apologize for that. So let me go ahead and start my video. So, all right.
All right, Don, thank you. We did have a few questions come in while you were talking. If y'all still have questions, please send those in chat, and we'll make sure and get Don to answer those for us. Don, the first one that we had was, how big does the cage need to be for breeding purposes?
Okay, it varies with the breed. Okay, if the breed is say a Californian, it should be at minimum 30 by 30. Okay, that gives you enough room for the doe and the litter. If it's a mini Rex, a 24 by 24 will suffice. If it's a Flemish Giant, you're going to need a much larger cage. What I would recommend is always talk with the folks, fellow breeders, find out what they use. Okay, because you want to make sure you have enough room for the nest box, the doe, and when the litter comes out of the nest box, you want to have enough room for them to move around. If it's too confined, what will happen is you got all these little bunnies. The little bunnies are going to urinate. They're going to urinate all over the cage. All right, and that can cause feet problems on the doe. So you want to make sure that you have plenty of room there. The other thing too is that if you have too big a cage, especially for show rabbits, the rabbit can run its muscling off, because it can run all over the place, and the rabbits are not used to open spaces like that. If you ever seen rabbits in the wild, they tend to stay close to if they come out, it's not for very long, and they're usually in tall grass or near that. They don't like being out in open spaces. So it makes them very nervous. Okay, very good. What else we got?
All right. The next question we had was, we have been using Timothy hay as bedding. Is that a good idea?
Yeah, I would recommend if you're going to use hay for bedding, I would use a good horse quality coastal. Timothy is higher in protein, I think, than coastal. Um, the Timothy, the rabbits will just eat it a lot. Okay, I don't know if that's been your experience or not. I mean, personally, we use shavings that we get at the local feed store, and it works really well. With the shavings absorb the waste that the bunnies produce. And the does can dig up, they can burrow into it just like they can with the hay. The one thing I will say, if you're buying hay, be careful with it, because if you're using hay can migrate mites. All right. That's why we don't use hay, is because it has, if you get it from a barn, hay has a tendency to have mites in it. So make sure if you do get hay, make sure it's horse quality hay, whether it's either one. I've not used Timothy myself. We always used coastal. Okay, next question.
All right. The next question was, can the doe put the babies back in the nest box when
No,
they are able to get out and are 2 weeks old?
no, they cannot. The doe can't. They don't have that capability of doing that. Typically, what I do is, when I'm feeding in the evenings, I will go through and I will actually check, and I will move if their baby's running loose before I go back into the house. I grab them, I throw them back in the box. So, and when they get about, if they stay out too much, I pull the box. If they're about 3 weeks old and they're not staying in the box anyway, I pull the box out, especially if it's not cold out. If we got mild temperatures, they don't care they don't need to stay in the box. The box is only there if they need to stay warm, if they need to stay in together. And you'll find that whenever these bunnies get out, they'll still pile up in a corner somewhere. So no, the answer to the question is no, they cannot put their own babies up. Next question.
Thank you. The next one is, what is creep feed?
Okay, creep feed is, I guess I should have explained that a little bit better. Creep feed is like a starter feed of what you want to do. It's used to, if the doe is, you can use it for does that aren't producing a lot of milk, or if the babies look a little bit too scrawny when the babies come out of the box. Some does just don't lactate well, or the babies come out and you want to give them a little boost. It's like a booster feed for babies, and it's designed for small rabbit bunnies that are young. It's usually in a smaller pellet so they can chew it better, and it gives them a good start. Cattle people have been doing it for a long, long time, but rabbit people can also do it, but you need to make sure that you get the proper equipment to do that, and you can get that at any of the suppliers. Good question, though.
Okay, the next one is, how do you select a breed? They are nervous about selecting the wrong one.
Okay, I always say there's not a wrong one per se. What you want, that's why you want to go to a local show. If there's one that's not nearby you, that way you can see these animals, you can talk to exhibitors, you can visit with people and see what they have. You can, some of them will actually let you handle their animals on the table. So that way you can get an idea of, okay, is this going to be what I'm looking for? And then that way you can kind of decide if you're nervous about what breed to pick. First off, like I said, check, if you're going to show it at county fair, make sure your county fair rules say as long as they don't say what breed you have to have, then local shows are the best. Even if you have to do New Zealand's and Californians, if you go to the show, they'll have them there as well. So good question, though.
Thank you, Don. The next one is, what does it mean when a rabbit rubs their nose raw?
Usually it means that they're rubbing it on a feeder, or if it's on the top of their head, that they're sitting there with their neighbor and the neighbor is chewing on their coat from the other side of the cage. Okay, if you've got wire dividers between rabbits, I've seen that happen. If they're rubbing their nose, the fur off their nose, it's usually because the feeder's not deep enough, or they're trying to get the feed that's inside the feeder, especially if you use J feeders. If you use J feeders and the feed doesn't all come down, and we've seen this, especially during the humid days. If the days are really humid, what they'll do is the feed will stick, and the rabbit's trying to get to it, so they'll get their nose up in there and it'll rub it raw. So yes, typically it's not something that is hazardous. It just hurts you on the show table, if nothing else. It makes the rabbit not as attractive. So, but good question.
All right, the next question is it recommended to use shavings as bedding instead of hay?
You can use either one. We've in my lifetime, used to always have a bale of coastal that we use for bedding. It works both ways. So I can't promote one or the other. So whatever works best in your area. If you don't have access to shavings, of course, you're going to have to use hay. If you've already got hay, if you got easy access to hay, that may be your best option. But whatever you use, you want to make sure that if you are using hay, that it doesn't have a lot of stems in it. That it's more grass than stems. All
right. The next question is, what if your rabbit is overweight?
If your rabbit's overweight, there's a couple of things that you can do. The one thing you cannot do is it cannot walk or run it off. Okay. What you can do is start lowering its feed, lower how much feed you're giving it. Doesn't matter how hungry the rabbit may appear. There should be if it's overweight, then you're going to want, some rabbits are just overweight. If I've seen rabbits where the weight fit the size of the rabbit, they just whoever the exhibitor was at that particular show, I told him, I said, this, it was a mini Rex that weighed it was a buck that weighed 5 pounds. But if you pull too much weight off, it's just going to be bony. Therefore, you're not going to be. You're just losing out on the show ability of that animal to get its weight down. So what you want to do, that's why you want to monitor them early. That way, you're getting these animals at the proper weight as they grow up. And the guidebook will tell you at this age, this rabbit needs to weigh this much. This age, the rabbit needs to weigh this much. And you can kind of gauge it that way. And you can see, okay, is that rabbit going to go overweight? If so, that may be a rabbit you want to call out of your program. Especially if it's going to produce big rabbits, especially if it's a 4-class, a mini Rex, or a Holland, and it's just producing big rabbits. That's not something you want to keep in your program.
All right, thank you. The next one is, they have rabbits whose tattoos are fading. Is that an issue when going to other shows?
It can be. I know that a lot of shows right now are having touch-up artists at shows that will touch up your tattoo for you for a fee. You can do that. The thing about the tattoos, as long as it's legible, then that's what they go by. But if it's so faded you can't read it, that's when it becomes a problem. That's when you really want to get hold of one of these. Usually it's a registrar that's at a show. They also touch up tattoos, or they do tattoos. I know that at our local show, we had a young lady there that was touching up tattoos. She was tattooing bunnies for folks. And she uses a pen, so she could actually go over an existing tattoo and make it clearer and darker. So it can be an issue if it's not legible.
All right, thank you. The next one is, what does it mean if males and females are pinned next to each other and they start pulling out the other's fur?
Usually it means they like each other or they're bored. One of the two. Usually what I'll do is having males and females next to each other is not necessarily a bad thing, but yeah, the doe will sit there and put her head up against the cage where the buck can pull fur out, and vice versa. And so usually what I try to do is I try to at least put some separation between them. I mean, if you're putting them into a breeding program, you're definitely not showing them. So it's not as big a deal as it would be if it was your show animals. Show animals, you definitely don't want, to do that. But if you're in a breeding program, it's not as big a deal. So yeah, they do that from time to time. Usually it's because they're bored. What you can do is get a like say a 6-inch piece of pecan, and put it in there with them so they could throw it around and play with it. Sometimes that'll help. It's a habit the rabbits get into. Usually if the doe if the buck is pulling a doe's fur out, it's because they like each other. So not a big deal if they're breeding with them. It's only a problem if they're showing.
Okay. For show purposes, and I'm guessing this is for breeding show purposes, do the does need to be pregnant for show?
No, they do not. What you can do if you're planning on having them start having litters, you can, if the doe is of age to be bred, you could kind of plan her breeding around a show breeder, so that she's about, say, 2 weeks bred when you take her to the show. It usually helps with their condition of their coat, because these does, they'll put on a better coat right before. Usually they put on a better coat right before they litter. Usually it all depends on the weather. So, but no, they don't have to be bred to be at a show. No.
Okay. The next one is, you may want to explain for both breeding and market rabbits on this one.
Okay.
Do they have to be male or female for show, and which is preferred for each?
No, for show, there's no preference there. You could a lot of kids show bucks and does. When you're talking about a meat pen, it really doesn't matter. It's all about the quality of the animals, per se. If you're raising your animals right, you're not overfeeding them, that they are fed to be like an athlete, to grow at a constant rate, then they should all, does and bucks should feel the same. Especially at their 8 to 10 weeks old. When it comes to the show rabbits, it doesn't make any difference. A lot of folks, they tend to believe that the does show better than the bucks, and that's only if the bucks, especially for senior bucks, if they start spraying, because bucks will spray at times. If they're spraying and the sides of their cages and rubbing it, that's when they start getting that yellow stain. If you've got a wire between a buck and a doe, he may spray her and make a mess. So, but no, there's no preference there.
Okay, we've got a few more coming through.
Sure.
How long will a rabbit be pregnant?
Usually if they'll have them, you put the nest box in at 28, usually about 30 to 31 days, they'll have the litter. I've seen them go as far as 34 days, especially if they have a large one in them, which there is a process called palpating. It's not something I'm going to talk about in this particular class, but you can palpate does to see, how many babies they're going to have. With smaller does, if the doe's having an issue, you can't, there are certain vets that can do rabbits, and then you can oxytocin them, but usually about 35 days. Usually the does, I've had very few does have problems, but if they do, they'll actually push that large one out, and then the rest of them all come out behind it.
Okay. What if your rabbit is not eating or drinking?
If your rabbit is not eating or drinking, you got to determine what the problem is. If it's what you could do, get it some Timothy hay to start with. If the rabbit's got an upset stomach, they will go straight to the Timothy hay. The second thing is you want to take a look at the feed. Is the feed a firm quality feed? Is it starting to loosen up some? If you're in a high humidity area, is the feed swollen because there's too much moisture in it? All right. If there's too much moisture in the air and the feed's been sitting in there, it can go stale. All right. And that's why you want to keep your feeders clean. You want to make sure that that the rabbit has water, because they're not going to eat without water. Okay. You want to make sure you have clean water. You want to make sure that if you use a automatic watering system, that it's getting water, that it can you can test the valve to make sure water's coming out. All right. So a lot of different things there. We've even gone as far as giving the rabbit vitamins that you can get from the rabbit supply, and that will help. It's like giving them a vitamin B dose, and they'll start eating, just to get the taste out of their mouth, because that stuff is nasty. But there's different things you can do. But I would definitely start with hay. If the rabbit's not feeling well, then that's definitely something to give it.
Okay. The next question is, what does it mean if mother looks like she is trying to mate with the baby?
Probably time to wean the babies, is what I would say. Usually that's because the babies are with the mother too long, and she's wanting to be bred again. Sometimes that'll happen if you breed, if you have the doe has babies and you're trying to get the maximum amount of litters out of the doe. So you go ahead and put her with the buck, get her bred. And then when you put her back, she starts riding all her babies. Now that's usually it's a show of dominance. And in most cases, if the babies are already eating, it's time to wean those babies. I've not seen them do it with babies that are younger. Usually, if they're going to do that, the babies are 8 to 10 weeks old.
All right. The next question is it possible to breed and show the same doe or buck?
Usually, I don't recommend it because the does that we breed have had litters. They lose their, I want to say this nicely, they lose their best shape. Okay, they're now in production. If you've got a doe that's got a litter on her, you can get her back in show shape. I've seen a lot of folks do it, but typically what happens is once they have that litter, they're putting all their energy in raising them kits for you. So therefore, they're going to lose a lot of their conditioning. They're not going to be in really good show shape after that. So if you're going to want to show, the buck is a little bit different. Typically what happens is once, for ourselves, you can show a buck a lot longer than a doe if you're putting her in production. So that's the bottom line of that.
Okay, thank you. We got a few more. They got lots of questions for you tonight, Don.
Well, good.
Do you have to have your rabbit fixed for show?
Oh, definitely just the opposite. The rabbit must be intact for show. You cannot, at county fairs or ARBA shows, the rabbit cannot be fixed. They have to, if it's a buck, these are breeding animals that we show. Therefore, they have to be intact. So it's just the opposite of that. If you're showing at a pure pet show, that may be a different story, but for a regular ARBA show or a county fair, they need to be intact.
If the babies come out on different days, does that mean the doe is sick?
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. It could be that the one side, the doe has two sides to her uterus, so one side may come out versus the other sooner. I've seen that happen. Usually, if a big one gets stuck, that can happen. Usually, it doesn't mean that's not necessarily something wrong. If they come out several days later, that may be something you may want to check with the vet to get some oxytocin to get her cleaned out.
Okay, thank you. Do the stoas get big when they are about to have a litter?
Do the Say that again.
They said, do their stoas get big when they are
No.
about to have a litter?
Not really. Not really. Usually what you'll find is when they're fixing to have a litter, they'll start nesting is usually the first sign. You put that nest box in at 28 days, you'll start noticing the doe putting on a little bit of a belly as well as the babies are growing inside of her. One of the things that you can do is you can actually weigh the doe, and as it gets closer to time, she'll start gaining weight. Off just her normal feeding schedule. You don't want to really increase her feed. She'll be on that regular feeding schedule. She may even drop off her feed right before she litters. There are some does that'll eat straight through. Some does they won't eat the day or two before they're littering. I've never noticed what you're talking about to look at it, but I'm going to say probably not. It may turn red. It may swell, but I've never bothered the doe that much right before she litters because I like them to have a nice quiet time.
Okay. The next one is, do you need to be present while your doe is delivering?
Oh, by no means. Rabbits have been having babies for centuries without our help. If you go out there, you can check periodically, but they don't need you out there staring at them. It actually makes them more nervous. So if you go out there periodically and check, I've actually had one doe at one time have a baby kind of be stuck coming out. It was a rather large one, and I helped pull it out. But usually these does they have no problem having their bunnies the way nature intended them to have them. So yeah, it actually makes them more anxious, especially if you're not around them all the time otherwise. So if you're around them a lot otherwise, then it may not be as big a deal. But if usually the does want a quiet place to have their babies.
Okay. The next question is it recommended to use shavings or no bedding at all?
Definitely want to have some type of bedding, whether it be hay or shavings. You want to definitely have some kind of bedding. It gives the doe a natural, nature wants the doe to build a nest. And in order to build a nest and keep the babies in one spot, they're going to wallow out or make a bowl, or they'll make a tunnel. If you're using hay, they'll make a tunnel in that nest box for the babies to put the babies in, just like they would in nature. So you want to have that as close as what they have for what they would do in nature.
Okay, just a few more right now.
Okay.
What do you recommend to use to clean white rabbits?
Okay, for white rabbits, there's a couple of things that you can do. One is you can use put a little vinegar on a rag and clean off the urine stains. Another thing you can do is just using water and cornstarch on the rabbit. Work that cornstarch in really well. You're going to want to do it well in advance of the show. Don't do it at the show. Don't do it the day before the show. You're not going to have any success with it. You're going to want to be doing this weeks before the show. And then you're going to want to make sure you put that rabbit in a location where it can't get urine on it again. A lot of times what's happening is either they're bucks and they're spraying and they're rubbing themselves in it, because bucks tend to like to do that. You got if it's a doe, she's got a buck somewhere near her that's likes her, he's letting her know, hey, I like you. So he's going to spray her. So just one of the things about rabbits, but usually cornstarch works the best for white rabbits. They got some other things that people use on dogs, but I've not had a whole lot of success with it. The best thing I've ever found is cornstarch, because it's an abrasive and it's edible. So if you ever notice that once you groom a rabbit, you put the rabbit up, the first thing that rabbit does is it cleans itself. It's grooming itself back. Because apparently whenever we groom rabbits, we don't put the hair exactly where it needs to go. So the rabbit it'll groom itself and put the hair back where it belongs. So, okay.
Okay, a follow-up to the bedding question.
Sure.
Is, should you use bedding even if you're not breeding, just for show animals?
No. The only time I don't recommend any bedding unless the doe is having a litter. One thing that'll happen is the doe will, the animal, whether it's a buck or doe, if they have a place to sit, they'll sit in there and they'll urinate in the nest box, and they'll urinate and they'll make a mess of it. And then when they make a mess in the box and they're sitting on it, it just makes a mess of the rabbit. So I do not recommend doing that with a rabbit like that. Now, if you have an indoor rabbits, they do make what I call litter boxes for indoor rabbits, because you can litter box train an indoor rabbit. There are books written on it. It's not something that I've done myself, but I've heard of several people doing it.
Okay. Just a few more, and then guys, we're going to cut it off for tonight. We do have 2 more trainings coming up, so I'm going to ask the last 3 questions I have written down, and then of course on the next 2 trainings we'll have a question and answer session as well, because some of these questions may be answered then.
Sure.
Okay, so Don, the next question is, if the babies and the doe die, does it mean there was something wrong with the doe?
No, not necessarily. A lot of things, does die for different reasons. If they come down, if they're heavy milkers and they come down with mastitis, they could have an infection. They have an infection, they could die. If they have that mastitis, which is an infection of the udder, then the babies don't have anything, that they can't get no nutrition. And if they do get anything out, it's all infected. So then you've just, that's what, you can kill off the babies, or the babies just can't get anything to eat, and then they die. So no, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with the rabbit. That if it died, it just means well, I guess it is, but it's not really the rabbit's fault. It could be you'd have to investigate to be sure. There'd be some investigation for sure on that.
Okay. And then how likely is it for a doe to get pregnant with 1 fall off?
Pretty easy, especially if the buck hits her at the right time. Because we've seen that several times where a doe will service the buck will service the doe 1 time, and we'll get litters out of them. So typically, what we do for ourselves, and everybody has a different way of doing it. What we do is we'll have the doe, the buck service the doe 3 times, and then we'll come back, a couple hours later and do it. Have the buck service the doe 3 more times. Usually increases the chance of her being bred, and increases hopefully the litter size as well. So they're not having 1 or 2; that they're having at least 5 in a litter.
All right. And the last question of the night.
Okay.
How do you help your rabbit molt if they are taking too long of a time?
Okay, if they're taking too long to molt, there's a couple of things you can do. One of the things you can do is worm them. You could also use Ivomec on them, which is also a wormer. Both of those will molt them. Another thing you could do is, if it's you can spray the rabbit down. Don't soak it wet, but and then put cornstarch on it. Work that into a paste on the rabbit, and then that'll help. They'll clean that off and help it molt as well. So there's several different things you can do. Usually, what we do is it's either going to be with a wormer or with Ivomec, but it's the cattle injectable. It's not recommended for rabbits, but we use it. So keep that in mind. Full disclosure there, that it's not a recommended method, but I would definitely get with somebody to get some help on that.
All right. Well, thank you, Don. There's
Sure.
been lots of comments come in that this was a great presentation, so we do appreciate your time and
Definitely.
given all these folks answers to their questions as well. We will be sending a follow-up evaluation as soon as we have the recording to share with y'all as well. So be watching for that in your emails. And then our next one will be on October 22nd. So you'll get that email, hopefully the Wednesday before that event again, so that you've got it to save. But we're looking forward to having y'all, and thank you again for your participation. Don, any last words?
No, I'm really pleased to have all these folks on this. If you have any questions or concerns, please. I'm sorry about my lighting here. I'm on my laptop, so it's you know, if I get up and go turn the light on, it's going to darken everything, or you'll lose me on the picture. But what I would say is that if you have any questions, make sure that you use that link that we added in there for the Rabbit group. If there's something that we don't get answered that you need help with, we're here to help you. We want you to have a successful project. If you need help finding that rabbit for your child to show, let us know, and we'll do outside of taking you there and doing all the legwork for you. We'll help you as much as we can.
All right. Well, thank you again, Don, and thank you everyone for joining us. And we're looking forward to our next workshop. Y'all have a great evening.
All right. We'll see everybody.